Welcome to the Venly Expert Talks, where we aim to inspire Web3 builders with great stories from great minds. I'm your host, Alexandra Ahrens, and I'd like to remind you that you can always reach out to us on Twitter, Discord, or LinkedIn with ideas for the podcast and questions for our guests. Welcome to episode 14 of the Venly Expert Talks, and thank you, Sami, for joining me today. And Sami is the co-founder and CEO of Transak, and he's going to be talking with me today about making blockchain apps more accessible to mainstream users. So thanks for joining me.
Yeah, thank you for having me, and excited to talk to you.
Yeah, great. So just to start out, I'd like to know about your background in life and crypto and what brought you where you are.
Yeah, I'm originally from London, and I grew up here. I have degrees in computer science and physics, so like kind of technical background. I started my career as a software engineer. So I was a software engineer in high frequency trading, so writing code to trade options very, very fast, and we were doing market making. So you're always having bids and offers in the market, and people are kind of hitting your bids and offers, and you're providing liquidity to the market. So that's how I started my career off. And then I worked as a software engineer in a prediction market exchange. This is a centralized prediction market. There I was kind of on the other side of the table, right? So instead of being the market maker, I was the venue, and learned about building also a B2C fintech company. And something that really stood out to me when I was at the company is that a lot of the company's resources were dedicated to integrating different payment processes, different KYC providers, and different processes for onboarding users in different countries. And every time we wanted to go to a new country, we had to do a lot of work in order to make that happen.
Sure.
Right? So it was like more than 50% of the staff in the company were devoted to this in some way or other. And then there was like a smaller part of the company which was actually doing the bread and butter of the company, which was prediction markets, right? Just seemed kind of crazy. And then I also approached this problem from the point of view of a user, right? So I was opening so many different accounts on different stock market platforms, spread betting platforms, prediction markets like the company I was working at, payments apps, and I had to go through the onboarding process so many different times, and I had to manage all my accounts, and it was just very frustrating experience. So I became very obsessed with this idea of creating a solution that can onboard users to any app globally, and approaching the problem from the point of view of the app, right? So how can we enable an app to integrate some bit of software that will allow them to onboard global users? And then in 2017, I also wrote and deployed my first smart contract on the Ethereum blockchain. And that was a magic moment for me. I kind of realized that this is the new internet, and this code was somehow running everywhere and nowhere at the same time.
Okay, it's a great way to describe it.
Yeah. And then eventually just kind of put all these ideas and thoughts together. And in the start of 2019, started working on what is now Transak, right? So creating onboarding for someone to get their money into their blockchain wallet, basically. So fiat to crypto onboarding. Met my co-founder later that year, Yeshu, who was working on something pretty similar. I think he has his own story of how he got there, and that's really how we got started. And that's like 2.5 years ago that we met. So things have moved super, super fast since then.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Really great.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, congratulations on that.
Thank you. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. So jumping right into Transak, I mean, you've already really told me kind of the meat of what it is there.
Yeah.
Obviously, Transak is competing against other services like Ramp and MoonPay. How would you say yours sets itself apart from those services?
Yeah, so there are a few characteristics that I'll highlight about Transak. Um, Before I jump into that, I do want to say that I'm really excited to be working alongside all these other companies and solving the problem. And I think that it's really important problem that we're all solving. And the space is growing super fast. So really, really honored to be working in this market alongside other great companies. Some of the things I think that Transak does really well is, I think firstly, we're a very transparent company. It's really like one of our values. And when you look at our widget, when you look at our product, we show everything very transparently. We show the slippage. We're not charging extra spreads. Our pricing is very transparent. And that's not something you necessarily get in other places in the market. Sometimes you see, okay, their fee is, 1% or 3% or something like that. And then you get to the end of the transaction and you're paying an extra like 5% on spreads or other charges and things like that. So that's something that we really work hard on and pride ourselves on is transparency. And then another thing that we're really focused on is developer experience. So we've created an incredibly powerful developer SDK, and I like to quote Steve Ballmer when he was CEO of Microsoft, when he was developers. So that's something we say in Transak quite a lot is like really making the developer experience really awesome and trying to empower other apps to build on top of us. And we're making an SDK that's compliant, so we're FCA authorized. We're one of the first 20 firms, I believe, to be authorized in the UK, and we're just creating an SDK that's very modular and very, very easy to build on top of, and very compliant and secure. And then the final thing is that we're starting to launch some kind of alternative payment methods in Eastern markets as well. So we've just launched our India on-ramp. We're the first fiat on-ramp for these kind of local payment methods in India. And we're going to be launching more similar payment methods like that soon. So that's something pretty exciting. We're the first people in the world to do that. And then similarly, we're also doing multi-chain. So we were the first to go multi-chain, and we're continuing to expand onto more and more chains and layer 2s as well.
Okay, awesome. Obviously, you mentioned your transparency first. Would you say that is maybe one of the biggest points that helps you onboard and bring in mainstream users? Just to tie it into the main point real quick.
Yeah, I think that it's more of a long-term strategy, to be honest. I don't think it's necessarily gonna give us like 10x growth instantly, but I think it's something, over many, many years, people do appreciate it. And I've seen this kind of behavior from companies like Wise, it was called TransferWise previously, and companies like Monzo and like other neobanks. And if you compare that with kind of like the old banks who had a lot of hidden charges, I think that it built a lot of goodwill to have transparency over the long run. So that's the idea with that.
Yeah, no, definitely. Good.
Yeah.
Okay. So speaking about user and volume growth then, can you tell me a little bit about how you do achieve that?
Yeah. So there's a few dynamics behind how we grow more users, and I think of it kind of like an equation, really. So let's say we want to get as much volume as possible. So if you break that down into its component parts, it's really three things. So one is the conversion rate of our widget. So out of every 100 users, how many of them go and complete an order, right? That's and there's drop off in so many different stages, right? There's drop off, maybe we don't support their country or we don't support their crypto asset. Maybe they're dropping off at KYC. They didn't realize they have to do KYC, so now they don't want to do it anymore. Or maybe they're dropping off at the payment method because their credit card was rejected or something like that. So we're constantly improving that and refining that. The next area is the overall number of users who come onto our widget, right? So if we're getting Transak installed in all sorts of great applications, like MetaMask or like Trust Wallet or Decentraland or these kind of places, then more and more users are coming to that widget. So that's, if you multiply those two numbers with each other, you'll probably see that you get the number of transactions, right? So that the number of widget views multiplied the conversion rate from widget view to transaction is the number of transactions. And there's a whole bunch of submetrics under that, but obviously, in order to onboard more apps, that's more of like a sales and marketing type metric. And then the final pillar of our volume is more of a sustainability one, which is the compliance metrics, right? So out of every 100 transactions, how many chargebacks are there? How much fraud is there, etc. Because Transak takes responsibility for all of that fraud and chargebacks, right? So we could totally ignore that and it would be fine for like a few weeks.
Sure.
Right. So, but we choose not to do that. So we choose to put that as like a priority, and we're a compliance first company, and so we actually have a very, very low rate of fraud and chargebacks, and we have built a lot of capabilities in house to do that, right? So that's really important as well.
Good.
Yeah.
Great. So then, what kind of regulatory pains would you say your service is solving for blockchain projects?
Yeah. So Transak is the regulatory sphere that we operate in is called different things in different countries. In the UK, it's called a virtual asset service provider or crypto asset firm. In the US, it's called money transmitter or money service business. So what we do is we are the merchant on record for selling crypto. So you have there's a bunch of different players in the space, right? So you have payment processors, which is like Stripe, WorldPay, Checkout, Nuvei, these kind of companies, and then you have on ramps like Transak, and then you have apps. So apps can be like MetaMask or OpenSea or Aave or like any kind of app that uses crypto. So what Transact does is we are, to use payment terminology, we are the merchant on record. So we sell the crypto to the end user, and the app is not involved in that flow of funds at all, right? So the payment processor would be like a bank or a card gateway. We don't do that. Just to be clear, we use them to sell crypto. So kind of like you might buy shoes on an e-commerce store, and that e-commerce might have like an inventory of shoes. We keep an inventory of crypto, and we sell that to the user. And we solve basically two pains. One is getting the licenses, which takes in most of the countries that we operate, that takes at least 2 years to get those kind of licenses, and you require a lot of staff and policies to do it. And then the second thing, which I think is actually more difficult and is not really talked about as much, is the compliance operations. So it's one thing to actually have the policies and say we check fraud in this way and we do KYC in this way, but to actually have the systems, the technology in house to do that and to run it at scale, right? So to run it for like hundreds of thousands of transactions is really, really hard. So we have a compliance team and risk operations team of over 20 people checking transactions. We've built technology in house that takes a whole bunch of data from a whole bunch of different sources and stops bad transactions. And then we take the cost out of our pocket. So if we do inadvertently process some bad transactions, we pay the cost of that. And I would say that's kind of the thing that people don't really appreciate about us. That's so hard to recreate. And you could do it yourself, but it would probably cost you more to do it in-house than we can do it for you.
Okay. And how do you, so as you said, that obviously takes a lot of people and power.
Yeah.
How scalable is that for you then?
It's very scalable.
Okay.
For two reasons. One is that the vast majority of the transactions we do are fully automated. So we check KYC in an automated fashion. We check a bunch of data about the user's transaction in an automated fashion, and then we have a risk engine that takes all of that data and it outputs a score that says whether or not we should honor that transaction. And if our risk engine says no, then it's rejected. And then the only reason why we need human intervention is for borderline cases. So sometimes we're not sure. Maybe the person's ID was, maybe their photo was taken like 10, 15 years ago. So in their KYC, they look different now, or something like that, right? So it doesn't come up, but we still need to check it and we approve it. But then whenever we're getting false positives or false negatives in our risk engine, we're always tweaking the rules. So the more we do it, the better we get, right? And so as our volumes grow, we have to have more staff to man those operations. But the ratio between orders to human operations is going down as our risk engine improves over time.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Great. That's definitely a positive direction to be moving.
Yeah.
So you did mention that in moving into different countries, it can take you 2 years to get approved. So obviously those regulations are ever changing. How do you manage that situation? Is it something you have to keep up on in every place, or once you're approved, you're good, or?
Yeah, so the answer is yes, we have to keep up with it, definitely. It's a great question though. So when you get the license, what you do is you have to get in order a whole bunch of policies, and you have to present those policies to the regulator. Excuse me. And they look at all of those policies and they say, okay, this looks good, and you have to tick a bunch of boxes, and then they also have a look through your website and your product, and they make sure that what you're doing actually matches up with those policies as well. And there's really a lot of stuff there. It's like AML policies, PEPs and sanctions policies, and there's really a large surface area of things that you have to cover. So then usually there's some back and forth because you're talking about like hundreds of pages worth of documents. So there's usually some back and forth. Eventually you get to resolution. They say, okay, you're approved. Here you go. That's just the start of it now. So you have to do things like filing SARs, suspicious activity reports. So when you're a payments fintech company, you never have no fraud. You just aim to minimize it. So there's always going to be some cases that come through our systems, and we have to report those to the regulators and make sure that the relevant law enforcement or whoever can chase up on that. So that's always an ongoing thing. And then the regulations are changing all the time as well. So there's new regulations coming out, new requirements coming out. That's in the stable regions, right? So that's like UK, Europe, USA. In some of the less stable regions that we're working in, that are maybe just starting to regulate, or they're kind of just trying to figure it out, that's changing all the time, right? So like countries like India, Southeast Asia, and these kind of places, you don't even necessarily have a license, but you have to constantly be on top of the news and be on top of the regulations, and then and then if a license comes out, you have to apply for it and get it. Yeah.
With that, then obviously the landscape is changing drastically, quickly, regularly.
Mm-hmm.
So in the past few years, how have you seen it change, and where do you see it going from here?
Yeah. So when we started the company, the thesis of the company was to onboard to Web3 apps or like decentralized apps. Mm-hmm. But at that time, if you remember at the start of 2019, decentralized apps were like barely a thing. You had like MakerDAO, you had Axie Infinity. Aave existed, but it wasn't doing like what it's doing now. It was doing something else. So like these kind of things like barely existed at the time. And so our market barely existed. We had competitors, but like no one was really doing all that much volume. Maybe in like wallets and exchanges, that's the main places where people are doing volume. Now that's totally changed. So now like NFT market is huge, gaming is huge, DeFi is huge. So that's been really exciting. So we're just trying to keep up with it all and try to scale up. If you think about how fast we've grown from being inception to like being a company with 87 team members in like 2.5 years, right? So that's the same for the whole market. Like we're all growing, everyone's growing super fast. Where I see it going in the future is, I strongly believe that in the future they won't call them blockchain applications. They'll just call them apps. In the same way you don't call Facebook like an AI app. It's just like it's just there in the background, and it just kind of helps, right? So I'm seeing a big move of like Web2 companies coming and enabling Web3 capabilities, whether that's like crypto or DeFi or NFTs, and I see the market getting very big over the next few years.
Great. It's definitely the goal.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah. One
of the latest features that MoonPay has introduced is direct NFT purchase. Is that something that Transak is also looking into, or is there something else that you're poking around with NFT projects?
Yeah, absolutely. So I mean, Transak already works with some of the biggest projects in the space. We're working with Zrun and other apps like that. In terms of the user experience and really streamlining it, something we're looking at now is what we call one-click protocol interaction. So how can you go from fiat to protocol in just one step? And so we're working with a few different protocols right now to basically pay with fiat and then have the smart contract execution done under the hood. So instead of being like, okay, I'm going to buy ETH or I'm going to buy Polygon USDC, and then I'm going to invest in DeFi, and then I'm going to buy an NFT. We're looking at some kind of way to trigger that smart contract interaction as part of the fiat purchase, and to do that in a somewhat generalizable way, so that it's not just one app that we're working with. We're working with, pretty much any app who wants to use it. So that's in the R&D stage right now. I don't have anything to announce right yet, but definitely watch this space.
Fair enough. Good. And I can imagine something like that would be very helpful in getting that mainstream usership.
Yeah. I mean, if you think about the dream scenario for like Web3 UX is like you would just come onto the website and you would click one button and like the money would get deducted from your bank account and you would be using that. So we're just constantly trying to collapse down that experience into as few steps as possible.
Yeah, definitely. Great. Well, okay. We'll look out for that. Thanks for the little sneak peek.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah, no problem.
All right. The next thing here, on the one hand, you have fiat on-ramp services such as yourself, and then there are also services that allow users to bridge tokens from one chain to the next.
Yeah.
Do you think that over time they will be all connected and integrated? What do you think?
Mm-hmm. So my philosophy in this is very much the Legos philosophy. So trying to make all of these tools as modular and interactive as possible. I see a lot of mergers and acquisitions happening over the next few years for sure, and but I think that the real key to success here is to make your SDK work well with other SDKs. So we're very interested in collaborating with tools like Bioeconomy or Venly or any other kind of B2B tool, right? And it doesn't all necessarily need to be under one roof, right? As long as they work well together. So for example, I was using HubSpot the other day and I noticed that you have DocuSign connected to HubSpot and I can like click on a lead and send them a DocuSign. And, they haven't felt the need to acquire DocuSign, but it still works well together. So I think that's really the key to success. And that's also the real ethos of Web3 is collaboration, transparency, openness, and that's the approach that I want Transak to take as well.
Wonderful. Great. Transak is also in the front end when it comes down to making blockchain more user-friendly. So what are some of the most common issues your customers face when dealing with blockchain? And do you still feel there's a lot of need for education, or is it just about making it simpler?
Yeah, that's a great question, and a question that I'm very passionate about. So if you think about, let's say you take someone off the street, they've never heard of blockchain, and you put them in front of a decentralized app, let's say Aave or as a DeFi app, or let's say like OpenSea as an NFT app. So what are the things that they have to do? What are the hurdles that they have to overcome in order to get to value locked, as I call it? So like they've got to that end state of like earning yield or like having an NFT, right? So first thing they have to do is they have to get a wallet, right? So let's say, this is before we've improved all the UX, right? So assuming there are no solutions to this, which obviously there are, which is why we're on the call. But they would have to go and set up, let's say like a MetaMask or a Trust wallet or something like that. That's already pretty intimidating because it's like, put your seed phrase, don't lose it, otherwise really bad things are going to happen. And then there's like a private key and it's like cryptography and it's scary, right? Okay. So that's already pretty intimidating. Now you have to go to a third party exchange. So let's say like Coinbase or Kraken or Binance, and you have to buy crypto. From the point of view of the app, it's already game over, right? Because let's say you're a DeFi app and you send someone to Coinbase, like they're not going to come back because they have like yield products on Coinbase. That's like UX 101 is like don't send
Keep them where they are.
your user to like don't send your user to a competitor, right? So that's already a really bad start. And then they have to do a whole bunch of steps. They have to deposit the money, they have to trade, and then they have to withdraw the money out to a wallet, to a public address. And the public address has like 0x something in it, right? Very intimidating. I think we take a lot of these things for granted that like this is fine and that's just a public address. But we me personally, it took me like a few weeks to get my head around this whole process. Back in like 2016. Now it's like breathing for me. I can do it pretty easily. But at the time, as a software engineer, it took me like a while to get my head around it, right? So imagine someone who's not so motivated, they will not have the drive to do it.
Definitely.
Okay, so you send the crypto from your Coinbase to your wallet. Now you want to use the app. So let's say you bought some stable coins, you bought some USDT, right? Or USDC or whatever it is, or USG. And then you put it in your wallet and you want to invest it in that application. You have to pay gas fees. So you also need some like ETH or some Matic or whatever chain you're on. And so you have to go and additionally buy the crypto, and you have to buy the exact amount to pay the gas fees that you need. And then you have to sign something using your wallet. So that's like a real multi-step journey.
It's already quite a process. It's
really insane. And once you have it all set up, it works pretty well. But it's not a mainstream process. It's something that the vast majority of people are not going to do. So I think that app developers now are starting to think about what I've heard called the mullet, which is like it's like business in the front and like mullet in the back, right? So the front end of the mullet is like a Web2 application where you sign in with your email, you deposit with your like bank transfer or credit card. But the party in the back is the mullet, right? That's like the DeFi, that's the NFTs, that's all the other stuff. So I think gradually we're seeing a huge trend of applications that are kind of building mullets, and eventually, hopefully, those mullets will turn to a full, beautiful head of hair, and everyone will be crypto native, and it'll just be a party all over. But I still think we're a few years out from that. So I think the best route right now is to put a mainstream user experience in the front.
Okay. So a couple years out. So what are the changes we can hope for or look for to get us there in the next couple months? What can we look forward to, do you think?
Yeah, so I think in the next couple of months, I see apps integrating fiat on-ramp, integrating custodied wallet solutions, integrating meta transactions, and removing all of those frictions that I talked about. And that's something that's available now. So that's something that every app developer can go out and do some research in the market, and they can build their app in that way right now. And they can onboard pretty much any user with fiat across the world in most countries.
Okay, good. In terms of mainstream adoption, then obviously we keep coming back to it, but simplicity, sure. But what do you think it is that we need to really have more adoption from non-crypto, just completely average Joes, maybe?
Yeah. So most people don't use crypto because it's crypto and because it's the new internet. They use it because they want to access some kind of specific use case. And so there's a few use cases that I've seen so far that are really compelling. One use case is a high interest rate, so or yield as it's called. So if you ask someone, do you want me to take your $10,000 and would you like to earn 1% interest a year, or would you like to earn like 20%? They're going to pick 20%. And that's a compelling enough use case that they're willing to overcome some additional friction as compared to like using their bank account, right? The second compelling use case that I've seen is NFTs. So people have become obsessed with NFTs around, and I think a lot of it is like related to the reasons why people buy art. It's like status, collectability, and in some cases utility, which kind of brings me on to my next area, which is gaming. So blockchain gaming is an area where you play a game, but instead of the assets being stored on a centralized server, right? So if you ever used to play like RuneScape or World of Warcraft, you own a lot of items in the game and gold and all that kind of stuff. But like if Blizzard or Jagex decided to like nerf that, then you wouldn't own any of those things, right? Whilst in blockchain gaming, those things are stored on a distributed ledger. They're self-sovereign. So and there are some games that have just gotten incredible traction for that reason, but also just because they're like great games in their own regard, right? It's like so like all of these use cases I've said, like the UXs that have gotten the most traction have just been like really good UXs, right? So I think the way that we get more adoption is by having like really great direct to consumer apps, and that's not what we do. We want to empower people to do that. So I think DAOs is very exciting, and hopefully there are some use cases coming that I didn't even see coming. But I think that those use cases, along with app developers building really, really great mainstream UXs, is going to power it.
Okay. So in terms of app developers creating really great apps, what opportunities specifically could you see for some Web3 builders in terms of assisting in accessibility?
For Web3 developers, I would say maybe try to look at what's there in the protocol layer, right? So if you do some research and you play around, you find some really great use cases. It could be one of the ones I said already. For example, like in DAOs, you can really coordinate people in a way that you haven't been able to previously, right? Through voting, through a coordinated decision making on how to allocate assets, and there are some really compelling real world use cases out there, and I don't think that you necessarily need to build amazing new protocols, although I think people should continue to do that. But how do you take those existing use cases and how do you link them up with a real world group of people? Try to think about it in a traditional UX way of like, what is the problem we're solving? How does this solve that problem? And optimize for whatever is the KPI of that industry, right? And then it's your job to then market it and get it out there, right? So like B2C fintech marketing is notoriously expensive and difficult. Like customer acquisition costs can be like anywhere from $100 to like $800. But how do you actually distribute your product and get it in the hands of people and like make them aware of it is the next challenge that needs to be solved. And I don't think I don't think any of these things are necessarily new, right? All of those components exist and they've all been done before. You just have to assemble them. So I think all the Legos are there. So just have to take the Legos and like build something that works really, really well for a really specific group of people, and make them love it. That's my main advice.
Okay. Yeah. So not hitting everybody, but finding that point and hitting that target.
Yeah. Hitting a specific group of people and then making use of like the Legos that already exist.
Sure.
All the great developer toolkits and protocols that already exist. Yeah.
Awesome. Great. Well, that pretty much wraps me up. So anything that you want to plug?
So yeah, I think I'll just mention that Transak is hiring. So we're hiring for business development, marketing, finance, compliance, risk ops, engineering, product, all across USA, UK, India, and we're totally remote first company. And you can find us at careers.transak.com.
There you go. Great. And last question we have to ask everybody, who should we have on Venly Expert Talks next?
Ooh, okay. Very, very interesting question. That's kind of caught me off guard. I think maybe Ahmed from Bioeconomy could be really interesting.
Okay.
Seeing as you brought him up already. Mm-hmm. So I think you should give him a shot and see if he's keen.
All right. Sounds good.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
Well, then, awesome. It was really great talking with you and hearing your points. And yeah, I really appreciate you coming and doing this today.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me, and thanks for the great questions as well.
Nice chatting, and hopefully meet you soon.
Yeah, thanks, Alex. Yeah. Bye.